own your day before it owns you. That's not just a motivational phrase. It's a moral obligation. Every morning, when you open your eyes, you're faced with two possibilities. Either you take command of the day, or the day takes command of you. And that might sound like a small distinction, but it's not. Because the difference between those two realities is the difference between a life of direction and a life of drift. You see, chaos doesn't wait politely for you to prepare. It arrives uninvited in the form of demands, distractions, and emotional turbulence. If you don't set the frame for your day consciously, the world will impose one on you, and it won't necessarily be one that serves your growth or your integrity. So when I say own your day, what I mean is claim authorship over the narrative of your own life, moment by moment, hour by hour. When you wake up, you're standing at the threshold between potential and actuality. You're surrounded by an infinite number of possibilities, but without intention, those possibilities remain unrealized. And intention requires structure. People think freedom means doing whatever you want, whenever you want, but that's not freedom. That's chaos disguised as liberty. Real freedom is the ability to voluntarily choose your obligations, to bring order to your time and attention. If you don't do that, you become a puppet of external forces, your phone notifications, other people's expectations, and your own undisciplined impulses. The day becomes a battlefield where you are perpetually reacting instead of acting. That's why the first moments after you wake up are so crucial. They set the psychological trajectory for everything that follows. If you begin your morning in distraction and passivity, you've already surrendered ground. So what does it mean to own the day practically? It means deciding, before anything else, what kind of person you are going to be today. It means looking at yourself honestly, not through the lens of yesterday's failures or tomorrow's anxieties, but through the clear awareness that today is a new opportunity for voluntary discipline. Ownership begins with self-awareness. You can't take command of what you refuse to see. You have to ask yourself, what am I avoiding? What am I afraid of? What needs to be done even if I don't want to do it? These questions are difficult, but they orient you toward truth, and truth is the foundation of order. Once you've identified your aims, you can align your actions with them. That's how you move from mere intention to implementation. Owning your day also requires you to confront the small tyrannies that creep into your life. The temptations to procrastinate, to indulge in resentment, to waste time. These are the little habits that erode your autonomy. People often underestimate how quickly small acts of negligence accumulate into chaos. You hit the snooze button once, you skip your morning routine, you open social media before you've even thought your first deliberate thought. And before you know it, you've set a precedent for the day. You've told your mind that comfort is more important than clarity. And comfort, when pursued as an end in itself, is a trap. It leads to stagnation. So owning your day means declaring war on that inertia. It's not about being harsh with yourself, but about being honest enough to recognize that your time is finite and sacred. Every wasted hour is an opportunity that will never return. Think of your day as a story. You are the protagonist, and each morning is the opening scene. You have the power to determine whether it will be a tragedy of distraction or a narrative of growth. The decisions you make in those first few hours are symbolic acts of commitment to something higher. When you get up early, when you face the tasks you'd rather avoid, when you organize your environment and your thoughts, you're not just managing time, you're shaping your character. Because the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. If you can master your morning, you can begin to master yourself. And mastery, in this sense, isn't about domination or control. It's about alignment with purpose. It's about creating harmony between your intentions and your behavior. Owning your day also involves cultivating gratitude and perspective. Before the demands of life crash in, take a moment to acknowledge that you've been given another day at all. That realization can transform your mindset from one of burden to one of opportunity. Gratitude grounds you in the present and protects you from the cynicism that makes discipline feel meaningless. It reminds you that this day, this singular day, is not just another checkbox on a calendar, but a chance to build something of value, to become someone slightly better than you were yesterday. That's how transformation happens, not through grand gestures, but through small, consistent acts of ownership repeated across time. But ownership also requires humility. It means accepting that not everything will go your way, The day will resist you, plans will fall apart, people will disappoint you. But even then, you can still choose your response. That's what separates ownership from control. You can't control circumstances, but you can control your attitude, your effort, your willingness to keep moving forward. When you take full responsibility for your reactions, you reclaim your power from the external world. You stop being a victim of circumstance and become an agent of meaning. And that's where real strength lies. In the decision to respond to chaos with order, to respond to uncertainty with resolve. Owning your day is ultimately an act of courage. It requires you to face the discomfort of self-discipline, to resist the gravitational pull of laziness and distraction. But the reward for that courage is profound. Each day you take command of, no matter how small the victory, contributes to the building of a life that is deliberate instead of accidental, structured instead of chaotic, meaningful instead of hollow. The world respects those who take responsibility for their existence, who refuse to drift aimlessly. When you own your day, you don't just shape your time, you shape yourself. And when you shape yourself properly, you begin to shape the world around you, in turn seek truth, not comfort. It sounds simple, but it's one of the hardest things a person can do, because truth demands something from you. It asks you to look directly at the parts of reality and of yourself that you'd rather ignore. Comfort, on the other hand, whispers that everything is fine, that you don't need to change, that you can hide behind excuses or illusions a little longer. But that's a lie, and deep down you know it. The pursuit of truth is painful because it dismantles the fragile stories we tell ourselves to avoid responsibility. Yet that pain is precisely what makes it valuable. It's the pain of growth, of seeing the world as it really is rather than how you wish it to be. To seek truth is to voluntarily step into discomfort, knowing that on the other side of that discomfort lies strength, clarity, and meaning. Most people spend their lives running from truth because truth often exposes inadequacy. It reveals where we're weak, where we've failed, where we've been dishonest. And that confrontation can feel unbearable. So instead, people construct narratives, comforting stories that shield them from reality. They say, "It's not my fault," or "Things will just work themselves out," or "I'm fine the way I am." But those statements, while soothing in the short term, erode integrity over time. Because every time you choose comfort over truth, you trade a piece of your potential for a fleeting sense of ease. You become smaller, more fragile, more dependent on the illusion that you are okay when you know you are not. And that's the slow death of character, not from catastrophe, but from avoidance. Truth, by contrast, is harsh but cleansing. It burns away the unnecessary, the false, the self-deceptive. It doesn't flatter you, it refines you. It says, you could be more than this, and you're not. It shows you the gap between who you are and who you could be. That gap is painful to look at, but it's also the only space where transformation can occur. When you stop pretending, when you stop seeking only comfort, you gain the power to change. Because truth, even when it wounds, offers direction. It tells you what needs to be fixed, what needs to be confronted, what must be rebuilt from the ground up. Comfort offers none of that. It just lulls you into stagnation while quietly stealing your courage. Seeking truth doesn't just mean telling the truth verbally, it's a way of perceiving the world. It means refusing to manipulate reality to fit your desires. It means acknowledging when something is broken, when you've made a mistake, when you've betrayed your own principles. It's not enough to simply say, "I want the truth." You have to be willing to pay the price of knowing it, because truth often destroys comfort, and that's why it's sacred. To see clearly, you must be willing to suffer for clarity. Think about that for a moment. Every meaningful advancement in a person's life begins with an uncomfortable realization. The truth that you're wasting your time. The truth that your relationships are superficial. The truth that your habits are self-destructive. These insights hurt, but they also liberate. They give you a starting point for genuine change. Comfort, by contrast, chains you to your current limitations. You can observe this dynamic in every area of life. In relationships, people avoid difficult conversations because they want to preserve harmony, but in doing so, they allow resentment to grow beneath the surface. In work, people avoid honest self-assessment because it's easier to blame the system, the boss, or the circumstances. In their personal lives, they distract themselves endlessly, with entertainment, with social media, with busyness. Anything to avoid sitting in silence with the truth of who they are. But the truth doesn't disappear when you ignore it. It just waits. It waits for the moment when the illusion collapses, when comfort can no longer hide the consequences of avoidance. And when that happens, the pain of facing truth becomes far greater than it would have been if you had confronted it earlier. That's why seeking truth daily, deliberately, humbly, is essential. It's not an act of cruelty toward yourself. It's an act of courage and compassion. The reason truth is difficult is because it demands responsibility. If you admit that something is wrong, you can no longer pretend you are powerless. You have to act. You have to change your behavior, your thoughts, your habits, and action requires effort. Comfort tells you that you can have fulfillment without effort, meaning without sacrifice, happiness without discipline. But those are illusions. Anything worthwhile in life requires the willingness to bear the burden of reality. You have to look at the facts, however unpleasant, and say, this is where I am, this is what's true. Only then can you build something authentic. Truth is the foundation on which strength is built. Comfort is the pillow that smothers it. Seeking truth also means being skeptical of your own biases. It's easy to believe that you already see clearly, that your opinions and feelings reflect reality, but that's rarely the case. The mind is clever at rationalizing what it wants to believe. So seeking truth means constantly questioning yourself. Am I seeing this accurately, or am I protecting my ego? Am I acting from honesty or from fear? This kind of self-interrogation is uncomfortable because it dismantles certainty, but it keeps you honest. And honesty, while painful, is liberating. When you stop lying to yourself, even about the smallest things, you reclaim a part of your soul that had been lost to self-deception. You can't live a meaningful life without aligning yourself with truth. Every great story, every act of heroism, begins with someone refusing to accept a comforting lie. It's the individual who says, no, I won't pretend. I'll face reality, however difficult it is. And in that moment, something miraculous happens. The person becomes resilient. Because truth strengthens you, while comfort weakens you. Truth prepares you for the weight of existence. Comfort leaves you fragile and unprepared. To seek truth every morning is to choose the path of growth over ease, purpose over pleasure, authenticity over illusion. It's to remind yourself that meaning isn't found in what feels good, but in what is real. Responsibility is the antidote to chaos. It's not just a nice idea, it's a fundamental law of existence. When you take responsibility, you create order out of disorder. You transform uncertainty into stability. You impose structure where there was once confusion. And that's what every human being is called to do, to stand up voluntarily and bear the weight of being. Because life, by its very nature, is filled with chaos. There's unpredictability, pain, loss, and constant change. You can't escape those things, but you can respond to them in a way that gives your life meaning. That response begins with responsibility. Without it, you drift, and when you drift, you fall prey to despair, resentment, and chaos itself. People often misunderstand responsibility. They think it's about burden or restriction, something that limits freedom. But the opposite is true. Responsibility doesn't confine you, it defines you. It's what gives your actions significance. When you assume responsibility for your life, you stop waiting for someone else to fix things. You stop blaming your past, your parents, the system, or fate. You recognize that although you can't control everything that happens, you can control how you act within it. That realization is both terrifying and empowering. Terrifying because it means there's no one left to blame. Empowering because it means you have agency. You become the architect of your own existence rather than a passive observer of your circumstances. Chaos is always waiting at the edges of your life. In disorder, laziness, avoidance, and fear, it creeps in through the cracks when you fail to hold yourself accountable. Every time you neglect a responsibility, you invite chaos a little closer. You avoid a difficult conversation, you procrastinate on a necessary task, you ignore the small problems hoping they'll disappear. But they don't, they multiply. They grow in the dark, feeding on neglect until they become monsters too big to handle. That's how chaos works. It punishes avoidance and rewards attention. The moment you face what you've been avoiding, the moment you take ownership of your duties, the chaos recedes. Order begins to emerge, and with it comes peace, confidence, and meaning. Responsibility doesn't always appear grand or heroic. Most of the time, it's found in the small things. Cleaning your room, showing up on time, taking care of your health, treating people with respect. These acts may seem trivial, but they're not. They're the bricks which you build stability. If you can't handle the small responsibilities in front of you, you won't be ready for the larger ones that life will inevitably present. Responsibility scales with growth. When you take care of what's in your immediate control, you expand your capacity to take on more. That's how individuals mature. It's how they transform from helpless children into competent adults, capable of carrying the weight of the world on their shoulders without collapsing. When people reject responsibility, they often do so in the name of freedom. They want to be unburdened, spontaneous, unrestricted. But what they fail to see is that a life without responsibility is not freedom, it's chaos disguised as liberation. It's a life with no structure, no purpose, no direction. And soon enough, that lack of structure becomes unbearable. You become lost, anxious, and disoriented because you have nothing solid to stand on. Responsibility gives you that solid ground. It's the anchor that keeps you steady amidst the storm. When you know what you must do, when you have clear duties and commitments, you gain focus. Your suffering becomes meaningful because it's connected to a purpose. And purpose, even when it's heavy, is always better than emptiness. There's a kind of dignity that comes with responsibility. It demands effort, sacrifice, and consistency, but in return, it grants you self-respect. When you carry your load voluntarily, you begin to see yourself as someone capable, reliable, and worthy of trust. That's not something that can be faked. It's earned through the discipline of showing up day after day, even when it's hard. That's why people who avoid responsibility often feel restless and dissatisfied. They sense that they're living below their potential, that they've chosen comfort over courage. And that awareness gnaws at them, even if they can't articulate it. Because deep down, we all know that meaning doesn't come from pleasure or leisure. It comes from willingly confronting the chaos of life and imposing order upon it. Responsibility also extends beyond the self. It's not just about managing your own life, but contributing to the lives of others. When you take responsibility for your family, your community, your work, or even for improving one small part of the world, you transcend self-centeredness. You become part of something larger. That's where the deepest meaning lies, in serving a purpose beyond your own comfort or ambition. It's why the greatest stories ever told are about individuals who shoulder burdens voluntarily, who face hardship not because they have to, but because they choose to. They recognize that the act of taking responsibility for something greater than oneself is what makes life worth living. But taking responsibility is not a one-time decision, it's a continual process. Every day, you must renew your commitment to it because the temptation to fall back into chaos never goes away. The world will always present you with easy escapes, excuses, distractions, indulgences, and it takes strength to resist them. It takes vision to remember why responsibility matters. That's why it's crucial to start small, to build momentum, to prove to yourself through daily action that you are capable of holding your life together. Each fulfilled duty is a victory over chaos, a testament that you can bring order into a world that constantly teeters on the edge of disorder. And it's not just external chaos that responsibility organizes, it's the chaos within you. When you commit to a path, when you decide that you are accountable for your actions, your thoughts, and your emotions, you begin to tame the internal storms. You find a sense of stability that no external comfort can provide. That's because responsibility integrates the fragmented parts of your psyche. It aligns what you think, what you say, and what you do. That alignment is the foundation of integrity, and integrity is what allows you to walk through life with your head held high, even when everything around you is falling apart. Responsibility is the antidote to chaos because it transforms you from a passive victim of circumstance into an active participant in creation. It gives shape to your days, depth to your struggles, and purpose to your pain. It's the act of saying, I will not let the world or myself fall into disorder without a fight. And that declaration, made each morning, is what keeps the darkness at bay. You are capable of more than you think. Most people never truly discover the extent of their potential because they stop at the first sign of limitation. They accept their doubts as facts, their failures as final, and their fears as proof of inadequacy. But the truth is that human beings are far more capable than they realize. What limits most people is not their physical or intellectual capacity, but their belief in what's possible for them. The mind creates invisible barriers that seem impenetrable, yet they are made of nothing more than assumption and fear. To realize that you are capable of more than you think is to begin breaking those barriers one by one, to challenge every belief that tells you you can't, and to replace it with the courage to find out what happens if you try. The human spirit is remarkably resilient. It has endured wars, disasters, loss, and unimaginable suffering, and yet it continues to rise. That same resilience exists within every individual, though it often lies dormant until necessity or conviction awakens it. The problem is that in modern life, comfort shields people from testing their limits. You don't have to face real danger, real hardship, or real failure very often, so you start to forget what you're made of. You start to confuse ease with safety and mediocrity with peace. But the truth is that strength doesn't grow in comfort. It grows in struggle, in effort, in the willingness to stretch yourself beyond what feels possible. You only discover who you are when you confront something that demands everything from you. When you push yourself, when you deliberately choose challenge over convenience, you begin to uncover hidden reserves of strength and creativity. You start to see that the boundaries of your ability are far beyond what you once believed. But that discovery doesn't come easily. It's forged through discomfort, repetition, and failure. Most people give up too soon because they mistake struggle for defeat. They feel resistance and interpret it as a sign that they've reached their limit, when in reality, it's just the threshold of growth. The moment you feel like quitting is often the moment you're closest to a breakthrough, because growth always feels like breaking before it feels like expanding. You are capable of more than you think, but you'll never know it until you're willing to risk failing. Failure isn't proof that you're not capable. It's proof that you're trying. Every failure, every setback, is feedback from the world showing you where to adjust, what to improve, what to learn next. The people who achieve extraordinary things aren't those who never fail. They're those who refuse to let failure define them. They see it as part of the process, as evidence that they're pushing boundaries. To reach your potential, you must be willing to endure the uncertainty that comes with effort. You must step into situations where success isn't guaranteed, because that's where growth happens. At the intersection of fear and possibility. Doubt is another obstacle that clouds human potential. It's the quiet voice that says, "You're not ready," or "You're not good enough." It disguises itself as reason, but it's really fear in a clever mask. The only way to silence that voice is through action. When you act, you gather evidence that contradicts doubt. Each small victory, each completed task, each brave step builds proof that you can handle more than you thought. Confidence doesn't come from waiting until you feel ready. It comes from moving forward despite uncertainty. Readiness is not a prerequisite for action. It's a result of it. The more you act, the more capable you realize you are, and the less power your fears have over you. It's also important to remember that capability isn't just about achievement. It's about endurance, compassion, and adaptability. You are capable of withstanding more pain than you think, of offering more kindness than you believe, of reinventing yourself in ways you never imagined. People often underestimate their emotional and moral strength. They think they can't handle heartbreak, loss, or failure, but when those moments arrive, something ancient and indestructible within them awakens. You find out that you can endure, that you can rebuild, that you can rise from ruins stronger and wiser. That realization changes how you see yourself. It replaces fragility with faith. Faith not in comfort or certainty, but in your own capacity to face whatever life throws at you. Discovering that you're capable of more also requires you to stop comparing yourself to others. When you measure your progress by someone else's standards, you set artificial limits on what's possible for you. Everyone's path is different, shaped by different experiences, strengths, and purposes. The real measure of growth is not how far ahead or behind you are compared to others, but how far you've come compared to who you were yesterday. Every day, you have an opportunity to expand your limits just a little bit, to improve your discipline, your awareness, your kindness, your courage. That's how greatness is built, not in leaps, but in consistent, deliberate steps forward. You must also understand that potential is not something you find, it's something you build. It's not buried somewhere deep inside you waiting to be uncovered. It's forged through effort, discipline, and persistence. Every time you choose to act when you don't feel like it, every time you finish what you start, every time you rise after falling, you're expanding what you're capable of. Potential is elastic. It stretches when you pull on it. And the more you stretch it, the stronger it becomes. The tragedy is that most people never test the elasticity of their potential because they fear the discomfort that comes with growth. They live small, safe lives and call it balance, when in truth, it's fear disguised as wisdom. There's a kind of quiet power that comes from realizing you're more capable than you imagined. It changes how you approach everything. You stop shying away from challenges and start seeking them. You stop wishing for things to be easier and start wishing to be stronger. That shift in mindset is transformational. Because once you believe you can handle more, you begin to act like someone who can. You speak differently, move differently, think differently. You carry yourself with the weight of someone who knows their worth is not defined by circumstance, but by resilience. And each day, when you remind yourself that you are capable of more than you think, you give yourself permission to grow, to explore, to become the person you were meant to be. Face the dragon voluntarily. Every person has a dragon to face, that looming force of fear, pain, and chaos that stands between where you are and where you could be. It takes many forms: failure, rejection, loss, weakness, truth, responsibility. You can run from it for a while, hide behind distractions and excuses, but it doesn't disappear. It grows, it watches, it waits. The longer you avoid it, the more powerful it becomes. But the paradox is that what you most fear is also what you most need to confront. That's why you must face the dragon voluntarily. Not because it's pleasant, not because it's easy, but because it's the only path toward genuine transformation. When you turn to face what terrifies you, you reclaim your power from it. You move from being a victim of chaos to the author of your own order. The dragon is a symbol that appears across myths and stories for a reason. It represents the unknown, the chaos that lurks just outside the boundaries of your understanding. Every time you step outside your comfort zone, you enter the dragon's domain. And that's where growth happens, not in the safety of what you already know, but in the confrontation with what you don't. People spend their lives building walls around themselves, hoping to keep the dragon out. They avoid risk, avoid conflict, avoid self-examination. But what they're really doing is locking themselves in. The walls that keep danger out also keep potential trapped inside. To grow, you have to tear those walls down and step willingly into the uncertainty that lies beyond. When you face the dragon voluntarily, you're not eliminating fear, you're mastering it. Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's the decision to act despite it. And that decision changes everything. Fear becomes fuel. Anxiety becomes alertness. Doubt becomes an invitation to learn. The act of facing the dragon reshapes you. It forces you to confront your limitations, your insecurities, and your illusions. You realize that much of what you feared was made larger by avoidance. The dragon's shadow always looks bigger when you turn your back to it. But when you face it directly, you begin to see its true size. You see that it can be challenged, that it can be understood, that it can even be integrated. Every challenge in life is a form of the dragon, a difficult conversation, a painful truth, an uncertain decision. These are smaller versions of the same archetypal struggle. Each time you confront one, you practice bravery. You teach your mind and body that you can survive discomfort, that you can handle the weight of reality. And over time, you grow stronger. What once felt unbearable becomes manageable, even meaningful. Because in facing the dragon, you don't just conquer something external, you transform something internal. You become the kind of person who can stand their ground, who can look at chaos and say, "I will not run." Avoidance, by contrast, breeds weakness. When you refuse to face the dragon, it doesn't go away. It festers in the dark corners of your life. It infects your thoughts, your relationships, your sense of peace. You start to live in a smaller and smaller world, one defined by what you refuse to confront. You rationalize it by saying you're being careful or realistic, but deep down you know it's fear. And fear tolerated long enough becomes resentment. You begin to resent the world, other people, even yourself, because you sense that you're not living up to your potential. That's the cost of avoidance. It erodes your soul slowly, quietly, until you become a shell of what you could have been. Facing the dragon voluntarily reverses that process. It restores integrity. It gives you back your sense of agency. The reason you must face the dragon voluntarily, rather than wait until it corners you, is because voluntary confrontation builds strength, while forced confrontation builds trauma. If you run from your problems until they catch you, you face them in a state of panic and weakness. But if you face them willingly, you face them from a position of strength. You choose the terms of the encounter. You approach with preparation and courage rather than fear and desperation. That choice makes all the difference. Life will present you with suffering no matter what you do. But you can choose whether that suffering refines you or destroys you. Voluntary confrontation transforms suffering into meaning. You also learn something profound. When you face the dragon, it's guarding something valuable. In every myth, the dragon protects treasure, gold, wisdom, freedom, or the rescue of the innocent. That symbolism is not accidental. It's a psychological truth. Whatever you fear most often hides the thing you most need. The fear of rejection hides the possibility of connection. The fear of failure hides the potential for mastery. The fear of truth hides the chance for freedom. The dragon stands guard at the doorway to your next stage of growth, and the only way through is confrontation. You can't bypass it, you can't outthink it, and you can't delegate it. You must face it yourself. To face the dragon doesn't mean you always win. Sometimes you get burned. Sometimes you fail, fall short, or lose. But even in defeat, you gain something irreplaceable: knowledge of yourself. You learn where you are weak and where you are strong. You learn what needs to be rebuilt, refined, or abandoned. And that knowledge is priceless because it turns you into someone more capable of facing the next dragon that appears. Life doesn't get easier, but you get better. You stop fearing difficulty because you've learned that on the other side of struggle lies transformation. You stop fearing the dragon because you've realized it was never just a monster. It was a teacher. When you face the dragon voluntarily, you also inspire others to do the same. Courage is contagious. People watch you confront what they themselves are afraid of, and it gives them permission to believe they can do it too. That's how strength spreads through families, communities, and cultures. It begins with individuals who refuse to bow to fear, who choose to meet chaos with courage instead of avoidance. The world doesn't need more people who hide from their dragons. It needs people who face them, who fight them, who learn from them, and who return with the wisdom and strength to help others do the same. The dragon will always be there in one form or another because chaos is woven into the fabric of existence. You can't eliminate it, but you can learn to face it properly. And when you do, you discover that the dragon was never just an enemy. It was an opportunity for transformation disguised as fear. Gratitude transforms suffering into strength. It sounds almost paradoxical. How could you be thankful for what hurts you? How could appreciation coexist with pain? Yet that's precisely the power of gratitude. It doesn't erase suffering, it redeems it. It takes the raw, chaotic energy of pain and reshapes it into something meaningful. When you choose to be grateful even in hardship, you're not denying reality or pretending that everything is fine. You're making a deeper declaration that your spirit is stronger than your circumstances, that there is still something to value, to learn, and to build from, even when everything seems broken. Gratitude is the alchemy of the soul. It turns bitterness into wisdom, despair into endurance, and loss into perspective. Suffering is inevitable. Every person encounters it in one form or another: loss, failure, rejection, illness, betrayal, uncertainty. You can't live without pain, but you can decide what to do with it. You can let it make you bitter, resentful, and closed off, or you can use it as a forge for strength and understanding. Gratitude is what determines that outcome. When you approach your suffering with gratitude, you ask a different set of questions. Instead of, "Why me?" you begin to ask, "What can this teach me?" Or, "How can I use this?" That shift in perspective changes the emotional chemistry of suffering. It doesn't take away the weight, but it gives you the strength to carry it. Gratitude grounds you in the present. Pain has a way of pulling your mind into the past, replaying what went wrong, or projecting into the future, imagining what might go wrong next. Gratitude anchors you in the now, reminding you that even amidst pain, there are things still worth appreciating: breath, life, love, memory, opportunity. It reconnects you to reality in a way that resentment never can. Resentment blinds you to what's still good, while gratitude sharpens your vision to see it clearly. It reminds you that suffering, while real, is not the whole story. There is still beauty, still hope, still meaning to be found, even in the darkest moments. When you practice gratitude, you reclaim your agency. You stop being a passive recipient of suffering and become an active participant in transformation. Pain alone doesn't make you grow. What you do with pain does. Gratitude is the mechanism that turns passive endurance into active strength. It forces you to look deeper into your circumstances to search for something redeemable, some insight or lesson that can be carried forward. You begin to realize that many of the qualities you admire most in yourself and others, resilience, empathy, courage, humility, are born not from comfort, but from adversity that has been processed through gratitude. It's through facing hardship and choosing to be thankful for the opportunity to learn that character is formed. It's easy to be grateful when life is kind. Anyone can appreciate joy, success, and ease. But real gratitude reveals itself when things fall apart. That's when it becomes a discipline rather than a reaction. It's a conscious act of defiance against despair. It's looking at something painful and saying, "You will not make me bitter. You will make me wiser." Gratitude in suffering is an assertion of meaning. It's the refusal to let pain strip you of perspective. It's the decision to keep your heart open when it would be easier to close it. And in that act, there's a quiet kind of heroism, the strength to keep seeing light even when surrounded by darkness. Gratitude doesn't mean you have to like your suffering. It doesn't mean pretending that injustice or tragedy are good things. It simply means refusing to let those experiences define you as a victim. It means acknowledging the reality of pain while simultaneously seeking the value hidden within it. For example, when you lose something or someone you love, gratitude doesn't erase the grief, but it allows you to cherish what was real instead of focusing only on the absence. It lets you hold the memory as a gift rather than a wound. When you fail, gratitude shifts your focus from humiliation to growth, from loss to learning. Each painful event becomes a stepping stone toward greater awareness. There's also a physiological truth to gratitude. Neuroscience shows that consistent gratitude rewires the brain, reducing anxiety and increasing resilience. The act of intentionally focusing on what is good and meaningful changes the way your nervous system responds to stress. It teaches your body and mind to remain balanced in difficulty, to interpret challenge as opportunity rather than threat. That's why gratitude isn't just emotional or spiritual, it's biological. It strengthens your system to withstand life's inevitable storms. In that sense, gratitude is a form of armor, not the kind that hardens you, but the kind that fortifies you from within. In the absence of gratitude, suffering metastasizes into something destructive. It becomes resentment, self-pity, cynicism. These emotions poison the soul because they trap you in the past and convince you that the world owes you something. Gratitude breaks that cycle. It reminds you that life, despite its brutality, is still a gift. It returns a sense of proportion to your perception. No matter how much you've lost, there's always something left to be grateful for. The chance to breathe, to learn, to love, to begin again. And that awareness creates hope, even in the smallest measure. Hope is not optimism, it's the will to continue despite the lack of certainty. Gratitude fuels that will. Gratitude also humbles you. It reminds you that everything you have, every opportunity, every moment of kindness, every lesson learned, is not something you were entitled to. It was given, often by others' effort, by chance, or by grace. That realization cultivates empathy. You become more understanding, less judgmental, more generous. You stop seeing life as something that owes you comfort and start seeing it as something that invites you to contribute meaningfully. Gratitude transforms not just how you interpret suffering, but how you interact with the world. It makes you a force of stability and compassion in a world that constantly teeters toward bitterness and blame. The truth is that gratitude is not natural in suffering. It's learned. It's a skill that must be practiced daily, especially when it's hardest. You build it by training your mind to look for the good, to name it, to hold it close even when your emotions resist. And over time, something incredible happens. The same experiences that once broke you become the source of your strength. You begin to thank the pain, not because it was pleasant, but because it made you see who you really are. Gratitude doesn't erase suffering. It transforms it into a testament of endurance, into proof that even in the face of chaos, the human spirit can still choose to see meaning, can still choose to rise each morning. You stand at the crossroads between who you were and who you could become. The world will always be uncertain, chaotic, and demanding, but within that uncertainty lies the opportunity for transformation. When you choose to own your day, to seek truth instead of comfort, to shoulder responsibility rather than flee from it, you set the foundation for a life of depth and integrity. When you remind yourself that you are capable of far more than you think, and that courage is found in voluntarily facing the dragons that guard your potential, you begin to grow into someone formidable, someone who does not bow to fear but learns from it. And when you anchor it all in gratitude, transforming suffering into strength, you discover the quiet power of meaning that endures beyond circumstance. Each of these principles, ownership, truth, responsibility, courage, capability, and gratitude, is not merely a thought to recite but a way to live. They are the tools through which chaos becomes order, weakness becomes strength, and existence becomes purpose. So every morning when you wake, remember that you have a choice to drift or to rise, to fear or to face, to survive or to grow. Speak these truths to yourself until they shape you. Because the greatest transformation doesn't come from the world around you. It comes from the decision, made daily and deliberately, to become the person you were meant to be.